In 2014, there were 459 suicides registered in Ireland. That's compared to 475 the previous year. This year alone, in the first quarter, 77 suicides have been registered to the Central Statistics Office. It's well known that 70% of suicides each year are males. And although that is still the case, more and more females are taking their own lives. As part of our Time to Talk Mental Health Week, we travelled to Limerick City to meet the volunteers from the Corbett Suicide Prevention Patrols, a suicide prevention group who patrol between the 4 bridges in the Limerick City area. Limerick City is one of only a number of cities in Ireland who have seen an increase in suicide in recent years. Formed in 2012, CSPP have saved almost 300 lives. Every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday night, CSPP units patrol between the New Bridge, Sarsfield Bridge, Thomond Bridge and Balls Bridge in Limerick City to identify and provide support to those in distress and maybe even contemplating suicide. We arrive at the base in Limerick City at around 7 p.m. and we're greeted by members of the CSPP. Each has their own reason for volunteering. Peter Nevin, a Limerick psychotherapist, knew that he wouldn't have the time to walk the streets on a nightly basis, so he uses his experience to help the group, especially if they've had a tough night.
I've got training and expertise in psychological trauma, so I knew that they themselves are going to be faced with psychological trauma in the work that they're doing here. So I thought, well, I'll try and come on board and give them support in the work that they're doing. I'm guessing they knew this was going to be tough, but maybe not quite sure how tough it was going to get. Because it isn't just the situations that they come across that's traumatic, but then they will often talk and listen to the people's own story, and they're hearing the trauma that the person themselves have been through. So you've accumulation over maybe many weeks or months of experiencing coming across people in these situations, very distressing situations, and then listening to their own story as well.
Safety is key for the group and they check all the equipment to make sure that the volunteers are also safe on the streets. Mike Mulholland from CSPP tells us a little more about this organisation and what we could expect to see tonight.
You could expect a mixed bag tonight. There is a big busy student night around town tonight, over in Crush, so all the students are back. You could be in for a busy night. Then again, you might have nothing. I mean, any night we don't have any incidents, it's a successful night for us.
Tell me, over the years, how have the statistics changed in Limerick?
We're up and running 3 years. I mean, in our first year we had 108 incidents throughout from November 2012 to November 2013. In the following year again after that, then it was up to 125 incidents, and currently now we're at 90. So we have 2 months left before we're actually into our third year completed. Not all of them would have been fully intent on taking their own lives. We have had 106 physical interventions there were people that we would fully intend.
Over the 3 years?
Yeah, that would have been fully intent on taking their lives in the river. They would have had to be physically restrained and emergency service called.
As the team set foot along the streets and bridges in Limerick, I tag along with another volunteer, Mike O'Mara. He tells us that tonight is a big student night in Limerick City. And because the students have just returned to college, or indeed started college for the first time, they can be at risk. So what about the junior cert nights or leaving cert nights?
Yeah, we've big particular nights. Junior cert, leaving cert, big nights. Junior cert this year wasn't so bad because the event was outside of Limerick in the racecourse, so there wasn't much happening in the city itself. Leaving cert night, again it was Crush, so we had a split shift on that night where we had a team on early. Then the team came on later and changed over, so we got to cover most of the night that way.
As Mike talks about his involvement with CSPP, he recalls the night he came across Leona, our previous interviewee from this morning. Walking the streets at night can take its toll, he says, but seeing Leona for the first time since he saved her is worth every minute walking along these bridges. What is it like now to see Leona there doing very well? She was saved.
As I said, it makes everything so much worthwhile to be out there, you know. And see, if you had one of those a year, it's working out 365 nights a year, you know.
Within the last month, 4 young men have been registered as entering the river here. 3 of these unfortunately passed away, whilst a 20-year-old student is in hospital with injuries. It wasn't long before the team came across a young, disorientated girl who was sitting on a bench alongside the River Shannon. One of the female members of the team intervened. Recognising her from previous encounters, the team members radio back to base, who have more information on the girl.
Told to update you that the Adair woman is out at the moment. That she's kind of up and down, but she's out for work. She's good, but up and down, but you said just to keep an eye on it, just let you know. Over.
Okay, Dave, thanks for that. Over.
While Eileen continues her chat, I grab a quick word with another volunteer, Ger McNamara, who tells us about the procedures that they have in place to deal with somebody who's in distress. And what exactly do you say when you see somebody sitting on a bench like this or standing near the river?
We literally ask them if they're okay. Is there anything we can do for them? Sometimes you might have to just come straight out and ask them, are you feeling suicidal?
CSPP have been in contact with local politicians about making Limerick a safer place. They want them to ensure that the river is not easy for people to access. Tonight is student night in Limerick, so as the clock turns 12, it's time to wander up to a nightclub in Limerick where more than 1,500 students will be partying. As the team walk along, they stumble across a man who is deep in thought by one of the bridges. The man tells the volunteers that he is okay, but he is thinking about his friend who took his own life the previous week. Mike tells us how difficult it is for the team to hear the news of a person's death, as they only have enough volunteers to walk the bridges 3 nights a week.
Yeah, it's always the fear. I mean, especially if you wake up in the morning, there's a report and know that someone has been either rescued from the river by Limerick Marine or the Limerick Fire and Rescue, or someone has gone into the river, and it's a night that you haven't been on patrol. It kind of does hit home that maybe if you could have been out an extra night and maybe done an extra hour, it might have made a difference.
As we finish our night in Limerick, Mike, Ger and the team keep an eye on the students, especially those along the riverside. He explains what the CSPP call a moment of madness.
It's called a moment of madness. I mean, you head around, they run, and unfortunately when they run this road, the first thing they meet is the river. Sometimes they'll stop and hesitate, sometimes they won't. But it is just a moment of madness rather than premeditated.
After our night walking along the bridges in Limerick, it's clear that the CSPP do vital work in the area. Their aim is to have volunteers walking along the bridges 7 nights a week. If you would like to donate or volunteer to Corbett's suicide prevention patrols, contact the team on www.csppplimerick.org or search for CSPP Suicide Prevention Limerick on Facebook.